Well, top of the morning to y'all.
It's pretty early for accents.
Sorry.
Early in the episode,
I've
early
been
in the day.
listening to an Irish dude in more ways than one. Documentaries. That's how you know it's a good documentary. I don't want to listen to someone that isn't from that country telling me about that country. So I've been really engrossed in the culture of the Irish, and just the guy sounded like Colin Farrell. So it even made it more appealing when I was listening to it.
He was awesome.
The documentary guy, his name was Fergal.
Fergal's a sweet name.
I know, right?
That's, I almost did weird professional wrestling stuff, but I'm going to hold it in.
It's going to be a long episode, both parts of this, because talking about Ireland, there's too much Ireland for just one episode.
Yeah, we did the same thing with Scotland. It's you dig in so much, and we were just joking about it pre-episode. We will do countries that weren't ruled by Britain.
It does seem kind of weird that we're just like Australia, Scotland, and then we didn't get far from fucking Scotland. We're going to branch out a little bit when we do other countries' history, but Ireland is just, it has this weird, fantastical, romanticized, like, mystique about it.
And then there's also the opposite where people say that Irish are drunks and they're rambunctious and rowdy and all that kind of stuff. Both can be true.
Oh, yeah.
But there's reasons why they are that way.
There's stereotypes for a reason for the most part.
But I think we sort of figured out, like, going in and looking at a full ass country's history and seeing all of the oppression that went on and all of the wars that went on and everything that happens on the island. Once you get up to modern times and you hear that shit, it's like, well, I would probably drink a lot too if I had to go through that.
Yeah.
Like there's generations of trauma that have happened to where drinking's plus
a lot of it recent.
Yeah. Irish whiskey's awesome. Irish whiskey's great. I'm not a big fan of Guinness or dark beer, but I will have one from time to time as a little treat. Like if you do something well and then you like it maybe a little too much, maybe try doing it worse and you won't do it as much.
Yeah. You can also toss this episode into the basket for Brit bashing. Just simply because, listen, when you guys have a history, we love the UK, we love England, all that kind of stuff. We want to come visit you guys. You guys are cool as shit now, like a lot of countries. But you had a long history and you did a lot of fucked up shit during that long history, as every country with a history, despite the length, has done fucked up shit.
Yeah, some more recent than others. We found out that Britain wasn't exactly playing good ball in the 70s.
Yeah. So before we get too far into it, remember, guys, wherever you listen to your podcast, rate, review. If they have 5 stars, go ahead and do that. We always monitor like the comments and stuff like that, especially if we get them through Spotify. We try to engage with you guys as much as possible. We definitely take in your episode recommendations, add them to the list. Weirdly enough, when we're leading up to an episode, it always feels like we get like 2 recommendations for what we're actually recording, but then it's going to come out, 2 or 3 weeks from now.
Yeah.
So it kind of sounds like people are like, oh shit, they took it to heart. Well, we were kind of ahead of most of you, but yeah, we do take episode recommendations to heart.
Yeah, we got one last night, a recommendation for the IRA. As Chris and I were both writing down notes about the history of Ireland, it's like, boy, I don't know how you read our minds. I don't know how you figured this out, but we got something cooking.
All right. Well, got anything before we start?
No, let's jump in.
Let's get deep into Ireland. Okay, so civilizations in these countries always have a start with something going back as far as like Neolithic, all that kind of stuff. You can really just try to track down kind of the archaeological stuff. And I think kind of the common assumption or common kind of school of thought is that the earliest confirmed arrival was around 79 BCE.
What?
Sorry, 7900 BCE.
Yeah, I was right around 10,500. There's been a possible presence that they've looked at lately that dates back to 31,000 BCE. I love this shit because when they look at this and you wonder, well, how are you doing this? What is this radiocarbon dating? And then you're finding animal bones that they can radiocarbon date to a certain time. And then they look at the animal bones and they see hack marks from some sort of like a rock or a knife.
Like it's been chopped up or butchered and stuff. And they also they're like, what also is in the soil at this exact level? And what can we date that back to?
There's so many just cool ways that they can do this. It's generally considered, just because this was during the Ice Age, that this was a land bridge crossing that they had come over in. The area is so interesting because you do have Great Britain so close, and then you do kind of to the south have the Iberian Peninsula close. But at the same time, you're still not that far away from Europe, that travel can happen from Europeans to Great Britain over an ice bridge, or actually I think, they said over a land bridge that was actually connecting Great Britain to Europe.
Yeah, I mean, it's 16 miles is the difference between like Calais and the closest point in Britain or something like that. So,
and if that water's dropped,
yeah,
I mean, which also seems weird, right? Because if we have sea level now and sea level dropped and you get down to like a land bridge, does that just mean that the rest of the country or the rest of the landmass is just that far up? Like we're just sitting on top of mountains if it's an island, right?
Yes.
Nuts.
Yeah.
Blows me away.
Yeah.
So then there was potentially, most likely, an ice bridge that came from the island of Britain over into Ireland.
Once it melts, you're there.
Yeah. If you stay too long, you could be in trouble. Possible boat landings from Britain were happening around 7000 BC. By 4000 BC, there was actually inland areas that they found that were just settled around water sources, because that's always what it has to be. You have to have, it's like Maslow's ancient hierarchy of needs. You need water, fresh water, and you need food. And if you can go inland and you have that kind of support inland off of the sea, so you're not fishing, and weirdly enough, I guess the mouths of the rivers bring water to the sea because it's not like you can drink the sea.
Yeah.
But if you can go in, you have those resources to get to, you can start civilizations.
That's when you switch from more of just the traveling nomadic to the agrarian, like hunter-gatherer, where you're able to kind of set down roots and actually kind of develop a civilization. I don't know why that, like, when you're talking about the rivers meeting the ocean, that makes perfect sense from like a migratory for like people moving inland, because you have to move inland because you're still getting brackish water further in where the ocean is meeting. So you're going to try to move in, and then further up into the mountains, you're going to get fresher water sources and things like that. They've had these stone tomb monuments. They're these like huge circular, basically like burial sites is what they are. And
they were the Irish megalithic tombs.
I'm trying to remember the name of the location where like kind of the main one is that they always point to, but they were able to date these things being
Boyne
built.
Valley, County Meath, Boyne Valley.
Keep going.
Carramower in County Silgo, Locrew in Meath.
Love these names.
Drumbeg, Stone Circle in County Cork. I believe that one is the one.
County Cork.
They said that one is the one that looks like the ones over in England, the big one, the big circular one.
Yeah. So as you can see, with Adam reading these things off. Oh, by the way, yeah, sometimes we forget to introduce ourselves. I'm Professor Chris. This is Professor Adam. With these like tombs and everything, they were able to date these things back to being constructed 500 years before the pyramids.
Did you say it? There's over 1,000 tombs that have been recorded in Ireland?
Yeah. So that shows you how large of a populace was doing this. And of course, they're doing this over hundreds of thousands of years. They're, going to get more refined about it. But then they, I think, move over more so to like either a cremation or more of an individual like burial plot system. A la we have today, basically.
It's pretty wild, though, because it's not just like there's one. There's a passage tomb that's kind of characterized by like leading into a burial chamber, very Egyptian. They had court tombs that basically had like a lawn on the inside of it to where you could probably come give sacrifice.
It's an afterlife, take stuff with you kind of scenario is what it feels like as well.
Yeah, you have portal tombs, which again is very Egyptian because they're upright stones that support a capstone that forms a chamber. So we're talking about different places inside. There's wedge tombs. They kind of, it's basically what it is. There's a narrow entrance that widens towards the rear. So if you want to try to keep as much protection and as many animals out there as possible, if you can make that thin, then as you get in, you
so
can
the
branch
claustrophobia lessens as you go deeper inside.
It's a reverse Willy Wonka hallway, basically. But these things were also lined up astrologically. There's evidence that they understood the stars and the mappings of the world around them, which we talk about it so much. There's so many different places in the world that looked up at the stars and thought, we need to figure this out. Like, we need to map this, all independent of each other.
It's an innate curiosity or something like that. Like, do we come from up there? Like, where do we come from? And that kind of is an unknown, so it kind of leads to the speculation on it.
Yeah, pre-video games.
Bronze Age hits Ireland about 2000 BCE. There was a discovery, I'm not exactly sure how long ago it was made, but it's this thing called, did you hear about the Cloney Cavan? Hold on. Cloney Cavan Man.
No, I like this.
So the Cloney Cavan Man was a body that they had actually discovered preserved in a bog. We got to talk about bogs for a second. So what is a peat bog? So a peat bog is basically this area where this accumulated dead plant matter, it's basically kind of like a swamp if it's less swampy. And 1/6 of Ireland is actually considered bog.
Would you call it maybe like living quicksand almost?
It's dead plant material. So it's almost just like this heavily compacted, and it just keeps getting compacted. The water is slightly acidic, which actually slows like the breakdown of the plant material. And because of this, it stores, because of the decay of the plant matter, it stores a ton of carbon. And because of this, once you can cut slabs out of this, or like logs out of peat. Once you dry it, they use peat for fuel.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you dry it into these logs, they turn it into pellets like we would use for pellet stoves. And there are some areas like, using it for power plants, for cooking. There are some families that have peat bogs on their property that they've used that for the entire generations that they've been there as like their family fuel source. They'll go and they'll harvest it at certain times of the year.
Wow.
With whiskey, you know how they always talk about with Irish whiskey, like the peaty, what that comes from is they use peat to actually dry the malted barley used in making the whiskey. So that's why it has the peat flavor. It's from being burned and then roasting that barley.
We're talking P-E-A-T, right?
P-E-A-T,
okay.
Yep. So they find this body preserved in this peat bog because of the acidity and everything. It's got like its skin looks all leathery, and they dated it back to about 2,000 years ago.
It was basically like they sat it in formaldehyde.
Pretty much, but it was just the top half.
Oh.
But what they were able to determine because of the preservation is there was resin in the hair as it like hair gel, like to style the hair. So they're like, this was obviously someone of means. They were able to actually find out where the resin came from based upon its makeup. It came from the Mediterranean. What? So even the 2,000 years ago, there was some type of trade between Ireland and the Mediterranean at some point. Of course, it may not be heavy trade because this is someone that's a king of a position of power, so had a lot more luxuries. But that's nuts.
Did they find out how he got in there? Like, did he have stab wounds? Was he killed and thrown in the bog?
They said it might have been some type of like that king had actually been captured by like another king, and it was like a ritual sacrifice where they like struck him in the back of the head or like broke his nose. I don't know how they determine all this shit because all I saw was a shriveled up corpse.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, a medical examiner can usually look at a body and say blunt force trauma to the head.
Yeah.
Not just he was chasing a boar and fell into the bog.
Yeah, exactly. And where did that bottom half of him go? Iron Age hits Ireland around 600 BCE. And then this is where you get Celtic speakers starting to kind of move into Ireland. And what's crazy when you use terms like Celtic, Gaelic, it's not so much a race of people in their shared genetic ancestry. It's simply a common usage of the Gaelic language. And the people that would use this language in the area would be considered either Celtic or Gaelic. It's kind of an interchangeable term.
Same thing with Latin.
Yeah,
Latin
exactly.
countries are all very distinct themselves, but...
Yeah, exactly. And so you have this... Remember when we were talking during the fucking Caesar episode?
Yeah.
He was against the fucking Gauls and the Celts and all that kind of stuff. You just had people moving from that area further up north and kind of spreading that. They actually break it down to the point where they're like, from a genetic standpoint and an ancestry standpoint, we are no more or no less Celtic than the British, or technically maybe the French from that standpoint. They all kind of have this shared, I guess, etymology, but then kind of split off at different points.
Yeah, and they had this, I guess, immigration from many different areas of these Gaelic peoples. They came up from Iberia, they came over from France, obviously they came from Britain. So you're getting this amalgamation of people from different areas, while interestingly enough, still like it's still the same kind of DNA because it was just the people that had rimmed themselves around them.
And where you get the difference is how they integrate with the indigenous population. That's where you actually get kind of the things that make, you know, the Irish accent different from the British accent versus different from the Scottish accent versus different language than the French and all that stuff.
It's all about how that tongue moves when you talk.
So that Gaelic culture is really established kind of by the 5th century BCE. Now, a few years later, 55 BC, this is when Caesar ends up making his way over to England. So we talked about that during the Caesar episode, where he was the first Roman, you know, to bring an army across. He did it twice. The first time he was just kind of like, hey, what's going on over here? And then the second time he went to try to pick some fights. But after that, Caesar was just like, peace out. I'm not coming back. The Romans, however, a few years later do decide to kind of explore that area a little bit more.
Fleshed it out a little bit.
Yeah. So between 60 and 80 AD, we're jumping kind of way up here, you get Ireland that stands kind of as a conglomeration of different kingdoms. And between 60 and 80 AD, there's some talk like, did the Romans even make it over to Ireland? And kind of like we were talking about before the episode, there are areas in Ireland where they have found like Roman little statuettes and coins and stuff like that. But at the same time, the Irish were going over and raiding the west coast of Britain where all that Roman stuff is. So it's kind of hard to determine if was that stuff brought over by the Romans or did the Irish go steal the shit and then bring it back to the island.
Yeah, and in the looks of Ireland for the Romans, it just wasn't that strategically important. Like, Great Britain was bigger. Great Britain, they had already landed. You're not going to gain too much, as Chris was talking about, just crossing that Celtic Sea. Like, or the Irish Sea. There's nothing there.
And it's not like they had full control over the island of Britain. They were still dealing with shit there from, like, the tribes and that were up in Scotland and up in the north. So it's not like you can be like, should we go over, you know, there's a landmass over there. We call it Hibernia. We know it's there. We should probably go over and see what's up. They're like, yeah, but we still got problems here.
Got a lot on our plate.
So if we start spreading ourselves, like Rome's not going to send up a whole bunch of new armies to go. We're going to have to pull guys from here and send them over.
Well, even in this island chain, Great Britain has more natural resources. Not to say that Ireland doesn't, but when you look at fuels and metals and tin and that kind of thing, that's mostly on the island of Britain. Mm-hmm. There's not a whole lot of that in Ireland that would be advantageous to have, but also you have to go over there and explore it to find out that it's not there.
1/6 of the country is bog, man. that's a pretty good chunk of the country.
You just said that's great fuel.
Exactly. Well, once they figure out how to use it.
Yeah.
Ptolemy even maps Ireland and like the different tribes and everything as early as 100 AD. So now at this point we're now in AD,
right?
Huh?
A Ptolemy.
Yes, A Ptolemy. No, the OG, I think.
Wasn't the OG one of Alexander's boys?
Yes. No, I think there was also a Ptolemy but this was way before Alexander.
Yeah, way after.
It was another Ptolemy. It was the Ptolemy that was good at making maps. He was a philosopher, that Ptolemy. He even had it marked down where there was a city called Eblin, which ends up becoming Dublin.
Oh.
So that was kind of their name for it. And we're going to do you have anything before 367 AD?
No.
We come to this thing called the Great Conspiracy. Basically,
love a great conspiracy.
Yes. So what had happened is the Romans that were up in like Britain and everything, those guys were probably not the Romans from Rome. Because as we talked about during the Caesar episode, after you got taken over, guess what? You were fighting for Rome at that point.
Yeah, you're Cisalpine Gaul, Transalpine Gaul.
Yep.
You are part Gallic.
Oh, there you go. So these guys are hanging out at Hadrian's Wall, which is that giant wall that spans across, that kind of divides north and south of the island of Britain.
Divides Scotland. It keeps the Picts and all the Scots up top.
All the savages. And so they get tired of being up at this point. They're like, you know what? we're tired, open the gates. And they just end up opening the gates to all these Picts and Scots that end up showing up. They then join them and rebel against Rome. And this is going to be kind of a common theme throughout these areas, especially in Ireland, is you're going to get people that are moving over, that are given permission by, let's say, Britain. Hey, move over to Ireland. You can have all this land. They need to pay their knights and all that kind of stuff, so they have to give them property. Once they're there for a few generations and they've kind of assimilated with that culture, using them because, they're using them to run the farms and things like that, all of a sudden you start to maybe think a little bit differently about that's no longer your homeland anymore because you're 5 or 6 generations in.
What do you have? What do you owe to Rome?
Yeah, exactly. Or what do you even owe to Britain at that point?
Yeah.
And so kind of I think the same thing here is some of these Romans have been up there so long, they're just like, we're tired of manning this fucking wall, man. We just want to kind of go about our lives. So this great conspiracy was these Romans turning against actual Rome. It's this rebellion. It ends up resulting in the Scotti, through, various means, founding Scotland, is what this allows.
Did we talk about that in the Scotland episode?
Yeah, we had to have talked about it. It was probably early on.
Yeah.
But yeah. We end up getting up to 431. Do you have anything about Palladius?
No.
So Palladius was...
I got a different guy in 431.
There is a different guy, a much more well-known guy, but I had to sneak Palladius' name in there because he actually made it up to the Irish to try to bring Catholicism and Christianity to them a little bit earlier. I don't think he's as successful as the next guy.
No.
But I think he kind of brought the idea. You know what he was? He was the beta test. The church sent him up and like, hey, there's this land up there, Hibernia, whatever it's called. Go up. Check how receptive they are to maybe, Christ and all that good stuff. He went up there. He's like, hey, they're pretty resistant. They're pretty pagan up here. He came back there like, okay, we need to create someone or lean into somebody who has some ties to Ireland to really kick off this whole Christianity thing up there. Enter
St. Patrick. St. Patrick is said as a young man to have been captured at the age of 16 and brought over to the great land of Ireland.
By the Irish. Huh? During the raids. He's captured during one of the... Oh, yeah, they start taking slaves. That ends up being a big thing, is like the Irish are like, these British people are so easy to capture and come over and work our farms.
This guy won't let go of the sack of money. Fuck it, grab him too.
Mm-hmm.
So he comes over and he works the land for 6 years before he ends up escaping back to Britain.
How? I mean, I know he does. Maybe he does.
Yeah,
but like, what ships are going over there to where you just show up? You're probably dressed very shittily because you've been a slave for a while, and you're like, "Can I get passage back across?" No reason. I just kind of want to see it over there.
Well, and that's where so funny that we talk about myths and legends before St. Patrick is just all legend. He somehow makes it over. There's talk of him escaping where he was enslaved and walking for a certain number of days before he came onto a boat and happened to get back over there. He ends up going down and studying in France at a monastery there. And from that point forward, in 432, Patrick maybe returned to Ireland to preach. There was talk of him being commanded by... I don't know, his head guy there. Of course, though, he has this dream.
Guy with the bigger hat.
Yeah.
Someone with a bigger hat than him.
Pontiff, something like that. So he has this dream that he is to go back to the island that he was enslaved and to spread the word of God and Christianity. So he goes ahead and heads back over there. He does some pretty good work.
These people just need Jesus. I know it.
Well, and they took a very smart approach that I think it was... more of an Alexandrian approach where he shows up to talk about Christ and doesn't say all of the other stuff that you guys believe in, all of these legends and everything still can be in the same book, but you're just missing God. You're missing Christ to be the one. And these druids that are over there that had transferred over were kind of like their priests that were telling these stories, this oral tradition of these beautiful legends.
It's St. Patrick is basically St. Pharrell. He's a producer. He's like, how do I mix these two tracks of your guys' pagan worship and all this kind of stuff? And how do I sneak some of these sweet Jesus beats in there on that track? You're basically doing the thing that rappers do, where they take like an old classic from like the 70s or something like
Cover.
that. Yep. And then they throw the beat on top of that into the chorus, and then they just rap to it. That's what St. Patrick is doing. St. P's getting ready to throw down a mashup.
Well, and I heard something in an audiobook that there's no way that St. Patrick didn't come to this, but obviously one of the great signs of Ireland's a clover, right?
The shamrock.
Yeah, shamrock, three leaves.
Yep.
What's also three leaves? The Trinity,
The Holy
God,
Trinity.
Jesus Christ, Holy Ghost, all that kind of stuff that's imbibed in nature. And if you can start using the imagery of nature around to talk about God, Jesus Christ, you're probably going to have a few listeners if you believe in such a nature-heavy religion to begin with.
It's all over.
Yeah.
Clover's all. It's the ultimate symbolism.
Yeah. So the other thing that he did was he kind of brought monasteries, this, I don't know what monastic, a series of monasteries that kind of start to spread around the island. And they kind of become these central hubs of these different kingdoms where there's political things that go on there. They're commanding armies, I guess, groupings of warriors that will go over and attack other kingdoms that have other monasteries.
Yeah, it's like there's chieftains, and then there's people like tribal leaders, things like that.
Their headquarters.
Also, don't shortchange St. Patrick, because this dude single-handedly drove all the snakes out of Ireland, which I don't like snakes. So for me, that, fucking score for St. Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, there weren't actually any snakes on the continent of, or on the island of Ireland.
There were before he showed up.
No, nothing. Technically, I think when that story gets told, the snakes may have been the druids and the pagans.
I kind of feel like that's what it may have been. This is also a person that, there's St. Patrick, and then there's the Catholic St. Patrick. They always bump up. It's punching up a joke.
Yeah.
So they create essentially kind of this myth around him, because there's actually, like, he has his confession, his deathbed confessions, where he's basically just explaining, like, hey, I'm a pretty normal dude. I came up here. I think I may have done, some good stuff. I may have not been as successful in conversion as I hoped I would have been, but it's basically just the confession of a guy that came up and kind of did his best in a situation that he was in. Anything that was in there that took away that more higher divinity status, I guess, was edited out by the church. So that in itself is just trying to go ahead and, edit the narrative in order to kind of make St. Patrick kind of this unifying force, or more of this, not a martyr, but just a figurehead.
Yeah.
Basically in Irish
saint.
Catholic lore. Yeah, a saint, exactly. They continue. I mean, this isn't where something after he dies is just like, oh, we don't talk about St. Patrick anymore. Obviously, St. Patrick's Day and what it's become, I don't think St. Patrick really had it in his head that he's like, what will people do when they celebrate my deeds?
Dye the water green.
Get blackout drunk, get in fights, and eat corned beef and cabbage?
Yep.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
So, props to St. Patrick.
Yeah, you need these things. You need these histories of these great people, and it just happened to be a Christian missionary that came over and did this work. And this sets up so much of the story of the history of Ireland, because religion is held in such high regard that it turns into wars. And these monasteries were good.
It is the thing in Ireland.
Yeah.
We haven't done any other countries that have this type of, I'm sure we're going to get to them, because especially in the Middle East and things, but this is the first time we ran into things where the ideology that caused these people to fucking tear each other apart always boiled down to a religious thing. And with that, like you were saying with the monasteries that were being developed, if there's money being poured into these things by the church to develop these monasteries, they're going to eventually turn into these hubs and kind of the gathering places for people to kind of get together and have these discussions, religious, political, things like that. And they basically are the intellectual and artistic centers of Ireland at this point. Catholic Ireland, I guess.
Yeah, and they kind of have to become that, because they've ingratiated themselves so much into the culture that the general meeting place for these things are going to be at the monasteries. They hold a lot of, like, eventually when things really start to get kicking, they send a lot of religious texts from the Catholic religion over into these monasteries to hold them. They're like great sources and a wealth of knowledge, which is going to suck coming up here in a few centuries because they're the first ones to get raided by the Vikings. But
that's what happens when you consolidate all that wealth, because it's not just like texts and everything. It's all of the tithes that are being brought in, and like, you know, the golden crosses and things like that.
maybe put those in the central monasteries that are a little harder to get to. But this island is just a patchwork of these rival kingdoms that have all of these monasteries. It would kind of work in their favor a lot of the time later on, but the way that it would kind of go would be depending on what threat you faced. They could work against it, or they could work with each other to take down a kingdom that is trying to incur on somebody, or you could be bought off to go dominate a kingdom with somebody maybe that you're more friendly with. And as you start to get invaders, it becomes a benefit, because just like Caesar fought all of the Celts and the Gauls and everything like that, you can't just take down one tribe and take over everything.
Yeah.
Like it's always going to be fighting. And there's histories of what is known as the High King of Ireland that are told that date back for centuries, like into the BCE period. They think more likely it was developed in like the 8th or 9th century, because it was very hard to be a high king of England or Ireland, because you had to take over everybody. You had to bring everybody under your rule, and there's just not enough people in your kingdom or to amass in kingdoms to take everybody over.
Because as soon as you go take somebody else over, the other three look at that and they're like, you want to work together to make sure this guy doesn't take us over? Yeah.
Or they start getting eyes for it and saying, well, I'm a better king than he is. Why can't I be the high king?
Well, the Roman Empire ends up collapsing, as it, you know, spoiler alert. And because of that,
the Western Roman Empire.
Yeah. And because so much of Europe is actually under the rule of the Roman Empire, when that starts to fall and shit starts to kind of go south for Rome, it shrinks inward. It's not going to go ahead and keep itself spread out. It's going to go and try to preserve the core part of that. And Europe, mainland Europe, actually starts to suffer, even so much so into Britain starts to suffer a little bit, because there's less resources pouring in. You probably don't have a lot of like Roman security and stuff like, so you're more prone to raiding from tribes, except for Ireland. This isolated island, you know, is able to basically experience this huge cultural growth. I don't know if it's because the Catholic, you know, religion is still flourishing there.
Yeah.
And there's not really anything to slow it down. Rome collapsed and they're just like, yeah, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing up here. We're fine.
We had the same agitators that we had before Rome, during Rome, and after Rome.
And as simple as it sounds, they're able to kind of, you know, gain a little bit more position in the country by translating the Bible into Gaelic. And so all of a sudden, you know, that sounds like such a simple thing, but when someone is just coming to your town and maybe they're speaking Gaelic, but they're telling you about this guy, but then they have to move on. You never hear about it again. But they come in and they can provide Bibles in Gaelic that you can read. All of a sudden now that's spreading, you know, you're getting the word out a little bit more.
You don't have to be preaching to them all the time. You can let them go on their own and figure this stuff out. And literacy rates in Ireland seem to be very high very quickly. There was a lot of teaching to be able to understand this stuff. And it's only beneficial to try to spread the words. If you can give somebody a book that they can read, that's going to make all the difference in the world, as opposed to having 10 people that can't necessarily read that you have to explain everything to.
It's crazy to think about what the actual like literacy rate for the majority of history has been, and it's been 99% illiterate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Catholicism kind of builds up such a base that you have Irish monks that are now migrating down and taking these pilgrimages down to Italy and Rome. And because all of a sudden Rome is like, you know, our power base, the Catholic Church is been like, we don't have this base like we had before. You know, the empire has shrunk and everything, but we still have a pretty good foothold in Ireland. And so much like the church does in every fucking thing that it's in, it moves into the political aspects. It's not simply content enough being just the religion of the country. It's got to control the aspects of the politics and how the governance works.
You're not there just to support people emotionally. You want to start physically controlling things.
Exactly. And so when you decide to take that step, it's going to go ahead and involve religious violence.
Yeah.
And this is where the Catholic Church, it's always going to fucking have its hands dirty. Like there's no way to deny this. It's happened too many times throughout history in different places. They go up there and anybody that's basically like, we're not too crazy about this whole Catholic thing. They're like, you need to die.
You will be.
Yeah, exactly. You're either going to be or you're going to be dead. So these are where you get like the abbots that are kind of moving back up into Ireland to kind of shore up a new little Catholic powerhouse until 795 rolls around and Ireland is going to have some new visitors.
The Vikings.
I fucking love the fact that the Vikings, when you track it back far enough, the Vikings come to Ireland, the Vikings come to Scotland, they come to Britain, they come down into France, and then jumping ahead just a little bit, the Normans that we talked about, especially during the British monarchy episode, they're descendants of Vikings. Like everyone is fucking descendants of Vikings.
A lot of that blood running through there for sure. Initially, they are just basically picking these monasteries off that are along the coast. They're going in, they're raiding, they're taking everything. We just talked about it. Real bad idea to make the monasteries where you hold most of the gold and everything else. That's
and you're the biggest building in town. Yep. Because you want to be visual. You have a giant cross on it, so it's like the fucking McDonald's. It's like the golden arches. You know which one is the monastery. It just reminds me of the Shane Gillis clip about the gay Vikings, where he's like, Vikings would be horrible enough. You'd see them coming in their long ships, and you'd be like, oh shit, it's the Vikings. Our women and children are going to get taken. Our women are going to be, captured and everything. And then you'd see him run up the rainbow flag, and he's like, oh, fuck. But the Vikings end up coming down. They coming straight out of Norway and raiding these treasures from the monasteries. They're taking slaves. They're bringing people back. And as they keep making these additional raids, they're having to go deeper in because guess what? John's group already caught this monastery. It hasn't built up its treasury yet. We're going to have to head further upriver. And as they do that, they're starting to discover Ireland's pretty fucking cool. It's not as snowy and cold here, maybe. There's some area for us to spread out. It's getting pretty cramped back in Norway. And in 1842, a bunch of Vikings just get together and they're like, we're going to go ahead and just settle
842?
right here. 842.
Okay.
We're just going to go ahead and settle here. Fuck it. We're going to call it Dublin.
And a lot of it, too, was this lack of unity in these Irish tribes. They were still pretty close together. So you would take a piece of land and be like, all right, we beat these guys. We get all this stuff. And then they would walk 2 miles and there would be another group that was standing
land borders
there.
with someone else's land. Yeah.
Yep, that was standing there ready to fight. And they're like, fuck, we got to do this again.
You're walking your property line and someone else is walking their property line. He's like, who are you? You look different than everyone here. It's like, do you own this land?
Uh-huh.
Not for long. Ha.
So the Vikings finally just get tired of having to fight all of these different tribes, and they find these areas. They start to settle Dublin, Limerick, Cork, Wexford, Waterford. Huh?
Kirk.
Okay, Kirk.
Say like Kirk. County Kirk.
It becomes such a big deal for Ireland because what are the Vikings great at? They're great at ships, which means they're great at trading, which means all of these towns, these settlements that they're building become massive trading hubs that then provide Ireland with all of these other resources that they didn't have before that the Vikings were bringing in. It's a beautiful kind of these people knew exactly what they were doing. There's a lot of murder, so not completely beautiful, but these people know what they're doing and they can kind of catch
a killing spree.
They can sort of catch Ireland up with what's going on in mainland Europe because they're starting to bring these resources over.
Mm-hmm. And it makes such simple sense. Okay, Vikings come in, they raid, they have to leave as soon as they raid.
Yeah.
Then they get there at some point, they're like, we're tired of having to make the trip back. Let's make a defensible area, and we'll call it Dublin, and then we'll have a place where we can branch out from and make our way further inland. All of a sudden, they're not going to leave, and within a century, Dublin becomes the largest slave market in Europe. within 100 years of them finding this the largest slave market. And of course, with that, it's not just flesh trading, but it's trading of all these other things. They become almost this stop between trading that's coming out of like Norway and Russia and all that kind of stuff and making its way down to the Mediterranean. So they're getting stuff kind of both ways, and trade just ends up booming. Cultures start to blend between the Vikings and then the people that are, living native on Ireland, which in turn have then conglomerated with the Celts before that. And you start to kind of have this situation where all of a sudden now these Vikings aren't really Vikings anymore. They're turning in and they're becoming Irish.
Gaelicization.
They're Gaelicizing them.
Turning them into Gales.
Yep, exactly. And the Vikings were kind of the areas that they're going to control or kind of be more Viking centric are going to be mostly like coastal and port cities.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're going to stick with what they know.
Well, it's just, there's nothing really, the further inland you go means the further the resources that you're bringing in from other places have to go to.
And then not only that, but because now you're drawing resources from the country, it's going to cause, and you're bringing more people in, it's going to shrink the land down a little bit and you're going to get more infighting. And so you get these, tribes and everything, and these kingdoms that are divided are now kind of still fighting against each other because, well, they don't have anyone else to fight against. And around this time is when you get the Normans in France.
The other Vikings.
The other Vikings, yeah. And then you also have the development of the House of Wessex in England. Do you have anything on Brian Boru?
Yeah. So there kind of becomes these warring factions within Ireland. I'm sure it was probably a little bit of the Viking blood that spilled into the Irish that were like, all right, we got to start trying to take over this High King position. So these warring factions kind of start to try to move for this total rule of Ireland. There's a guy that is considered the first High King of Ireland. His name is Mael Shecnail MacMaile. He's got another name that I'm not even going to go for. He's recognized as his first High King. He would die in 862. He was followed by a man named Brian Boru. Brian Boru, who is known as unifying pretty much all of Ireland, becomes the High King in 1002. He would end up ruling for 12 years, and he's kind of, I think, because we talked about the High Kings of legend and everything back then. This is kind of like the first legitimate thing that they can look at and say, okay, history backs this guy up enough. I don't know if it was because the Vikings were there. They kind of started this more of a written record. This guy goes on record as kind of the most successful High King that there is.
Yeah, and I don't know if the title of High King is one that's kind of self-imposed by him after he had kind of unified, or it's what he considered unifying the Irish people. He's considered a national hero. He defeats the Vikings. In reality, he was basically just using it to conglomerate his empire, to make himself basically to be Emperor of Ireland.
I'm sure when you consider yourself High King, that doesn't mean that you rule everything. It just means that you have enough gusto to be able to put down anybody that tries to come for you.
Exactly. No one can challenge you for that title. He wants Dublin. He goes into this all-day battle for Dublin against kind of the Vikings that are there. The Dublin locals are actually pushed to the sea. So it looks like Brian's actually going to capture Dublin. At this point, I don't know if it's the biggest city, but I think it might be the biggest city in Ireland. And as he's looking like he's going to, win the day and everything, he's going to be the hero. This guy named Grodar, this Viking dude, battles himself through the Irish lines, gets behind the lines, storms Bulru's tent, and fucking chops his head off while he's in the middle of prayer.
Not really how you want to go down.
But his forces still end up winning. He just he's not able to go ahead and enjoy it.
Got no place to put the crown.
Yep. So as Ireland kind of unifies under essentially the Irish culture in the 12th century, you got anything before that?
No. Are we on to Dermot?
Yeah. So 12th century, which is, I always have to look this up, 1100 up to 1199, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So we have the development of basically the 5 kingdoms of Ireland in the 12th century. We have Munster, Leinster, Meath, Ulster, and Connaught. I think Munster is the furthest in the south, and then Ulster is the furthest in the north.
Yep.
Or what you would consider Northern Ireland at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, Belfast.
Yeah, so there was a high king. It was kind of a token rule at that point. It was just, I guess, somebody that was just maybe the most powerful, but someone could tip the scales pretty easily. And until this guy named Dermot McMurrough comes in. Did you have someone before him?
No, he's the linchpin in this first episode. I put a lot of the blame for what happens to Ireland. It would have probably happened eventually. You got to think it would have, but this guy opens the door to Ireland in a way that
He's hardcore.
they can't recover from.
Yeah, he's very hardcore. Talking about blinding, castrating. He's kind of taken power by any means necessary. There's a situation where positions in the church were still very meaningful. And there was a position in the church that these virginal women could take. I guess, I don't know if it would be a nun type position, but it was a position of like prominence. And so this king from one of these kingdoms basically was like, hey, my sister's going to fill this role. And McMurrough was like, I don't like that. I'm the high king. I want to be able to put someone I want in that role because then I get the accolades for it. And so he has this woman tossed in with a bunch of his soldiers and fucking gang raped.
That's
in order for her to lose this religious position that he can then fill. He's not satisfied with this. He ends up kidnapping another king's wife. And at that point, the other kings, it's kind of like the Yakuza rule, actually. You don't mess with another man's wife.
No.
That's what the common rule between all the kings. The other kings were like, he broke the rule. And so they run his ass out of Ireland.
Yeah, he was the king of Leinster. He was a pretty high up position in basically like one of the larger regions.
Leinster bordered Dublin, right? It was on one side or something like that?
I think it's southeast.
Okay.
Because I believe Munster is southwest.
Okay.
So yeah, he turns tail and runs. And of course, where does he run to? He runs to England. And in England, he goes up to King Henry II. He basically says, we can raise an army and go back and take my position over in Ireland. I'll pay tribute to you. You'll be my guy. You can have that kind of area as far as, what's mine is yours, as long as you don't come over and mess with it. And Henry's like, yeah, sure, whatever.
He's basically like, I'm going to the Normans. You guys are going to see what happens. And the Normans were the power at this point. The Norman rule, they held Italy up to Britain.
Yeah, William the Conqueror had already come over. He had already taken care of England.
So Henry II was William's great-grandson. So it had only been a few generations before, but obviously they had worked quickly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's like, Henry, they kicked me out of Ireland. Please send me back. And Henry was already kind of looking at Ireland. He's like, at some point, this is going to become an issue. We've kind of maybe got the Scottish thing figured out. I don't know. It's going to come back to bite him in regards to that. Yeah, for now. And so, like you said, Dermot basically bends the knee to him. And Henry goes to the Pope. And he's like, listen, I'm thinking about going into Ireland. I know you guys are big in Ireland. I just want to make sure this thing is cool. Pope's sitting there and he's like, honestly, the Irish churches are getting a little bit too independent for our liking.
A little too uppity.
A little too uppity. So I'm going to go ahead and give you my blessing to kind of reign in and conquer Ireland. So you go right ahead. Just make sure when you start collecting that sweet, sweet tax that a good chunk of it finds its way down here to Rome.
And why not?
Yeah. And Henry's like, done, because I'll be taking some of that money myself and I'll just expand my kingdom. So fantastic. This works.
You get a chunk, I get a chunk. We take these people out, not take them out, but kind of rule them in. And the church is just as excited about that because a more ardent religious following is going to pay more attention, is going to pay more. And just because the English are the ones that are going to do it, still under your umbrella for now.
And at this point, Henry is full-blown Catholic.
Yep.
Like the English crown and everything like that is loyal to the church. And it's not like Catholicism is getting driven out of Ireland. They're going to be coming in with another basically Catholic themed force or whatever you want to say. So they're just basically going to kind of look like maybe they're tightening it up for the church's sake.
Yeah, you're rearranging the chairs.
Yeah, exactly. So Henry he's not going to do this himself.
No, doesn't get his hands
he's
dirty.
not going to take Ireland himself. So he
He's a
hires this
king.
guy. Yeah, there's this Welsh dude, and he's known as Strongbow. And he can't remember his full name. Did you write down his full name?
His name is Richard de Clare.
All right. Strongbow.
Richard Strongbow.
Yep. So he taps him to run the invasion, and he's like, cool, I'll go ahead and, these guys have actually been kind of raiding the West Coast. This is where Wales is. Mm-hmm. They've been causing us some headaches. So yeah, I'd be happy to do this. And he ends up taking an invasion force over to Ireland.
As long as you go ahead and hand me your daughter's hand in marriage.
Not Henry, Dermot's.
Yeah, Dermot.
He's like, I can just imagine the conversation is sitting there. Henry's sitting there talking to Strongbow. Dermot's sitting over in the side, and he's like, what do you want out of it? And he's like, his daughter, and just points at Dermot. Dermot has no say in the matter because he's already bent the knee to Henry. Well, so he's like, yeah, I guess.
Not to mention, if you don't get this guy's help, what does your daughter matter? Your daughter's going to be taken by whoever's taking your kingdom back over there again. So you might as well hedge your bets and get this guy involved.
Dermot still considers himself to be the king, the High King, and also the king of Leinster.
Mm-hmm.
By marrying his daughter, Strongbow is essentially making himself the heir of Dermot. And the whole point of this is to come over. Dermot will be reinstated as the king or the High King or whatever is going to happen. And then when he kicks the bucket, all of a sudden Strongbow's like, I'm not fucking coming back to Wales. I get to be fucking High King or King of Ireland or this portion of Ireland. And when, of course, he ends up coming over with the invasion force, the Irish, is this where they decide to fight naked?
I think this is kind of where it's coming up. So, Richard Strongbow doesn't go over there first. He gets this guy named Robert Fitzstevens, and they organize this Welsh and English mercenary group into an army. When Dermot comes back over, his return was to subdue Leinster, obviously, to get the agitators taken care of. There's another English force that's led by a guy named Maurice Fitzgerald. Fitz has to be something Welsh. Mm-hmm. Is that where this keeps coming in?
Fitzpatrick, Fitzgerald, Fitzsimmons.
Yeah. Just the Fitz thing threw me off. They come over, they hit Wexford in 1170, and they would end up taking Dublin. Dermot McMurrough dies in 1171, a year after Strongbow ends up arriving. So Strongbow has made his presence known on the island.
He's married his daughter.
Yep, married his daughter. He would go ahead and try to assume the throne, but there's an issue over this because Dermot's son claimed the right first. There would be kind of a squabble in between both of them. Strongbow, with eyes for England, had, I think, maybe pissed off Henry a little bit because he had taken the land that he had back in, I believe it was France and England, probably because he's like, fuck you, I'm King England, or King Ireland. Yeah. I'm headed over here. You're King England, I'm King Ireland. We're going to be on the same level.
This also pissed off the locals, too, because the ones that even supported McMurrough, Dermot, when all of a sudden this dude from fucking Wales rolls in, he's like, oh yeah, I'm also your new king now. They're like, but he has a kid that's Irish.
Yeah.
You married his daughter. That's how you're claiming to be Irish because you married his daughter. Like, you're not from here.
Well, not to mention you're the head of all these English and Welsh dudes that are coming over here and taking our cities.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're not a real big fan of that. But the fact that McMurrough, bad guy, did a lot of bad stuff. McMurrough basically traded like the entire country of Ireland for 2 more years of life.
Yeah.
That was the only trade-off that he had.
And like you said, Henry's watching Strongbow after he gets into position.
Jealous.
And he's like, this guy might have taken a little bit too much credit for this. And I feel like at some point, if he consolidates power there, he could turn around and start looking at me. But right now, he is a little bit, he is in a seat of power, but he hasn't had enough time to like pacify and basically build up his forces. So in 1171, Henry's like, you know what, I'm just going to nip this thing in the ass. He ends up rolling over, basically establishing dominance. And between looking at Strongbow and then King Henry, the Irish people are like, fucking Strongbow's been out of control. He's given all of it because he has to pay all these guys.
Yeah.
And so he's giving them land that belongs to all of these other, Irish Catholic or people that are just like native there. They're looking at Henry and they're like, if this is the better option, we don't even know what this guy's bringing to the table, but if he can rein in this other dude, then yeah, we'll go ahead and accept. And so Henry actually had more support than Strongbow did, which makes sense because Strongbow was the one that essentially was the face that came in and conquered.
And he buttered Strongbow's bread. He gave him back his lands in England and France. He let him keep Kildare, which was very nice of him that he was allowed to keep an area of Ireland for himself. In exchange for Dublin and Waterford and all of these other fortresses that his people had taken.
Did you hear what Henry made them feast on when he brought all of like the Gaelic and the Irish chieftains down to like pretty much let them know it was under his management?
I'm not going to like this.
Apparently this is a Norman delicacy, but it's roast crane.
The bird?
The bird.
Huh.
Yeah. And so roast crane still has this stigma in Ireland of like this. It was like the meal of defeat.
It was the Last Supper.
So like if you really wanted to offend someone, like an Irish person bring them to your house and be like, we're having roast crane tonight.
I think I'd be offended if somebody tried to serve me crane anyway. It just doesn't, there's nothing about what a crane eats that I think would make it taste good.
It's got to be something chickenish.
Yeah, possibly.
They eat fish.
Crane neck.
Yeah.
Is a light meal.
But I mean, like any country coming in, they think that, the Normans have this perception of the Irish as savages. And that's always the excuse that you make to when you want the fucking support of the church. Is like, These are not a modern people. These are not a civilized people. We're going to go in and we're going to civilize them and bring, religion to them and everything. And the church is like, fantastic. Just make sure we get our gold, man.
That's really all we care about. Henry's stay in Ireland would last a full 6 months. He got his fill of Ireland and wanted to head back to his nice palace in England.
Yeah, job is done. He has control over it. The next 50 years are basically going to see Anglo-Normans settle in cities and just grab up the best land. It's one of those situations where, you're looking at Britain. There's also the land that the Normans still have in France. But over the course of, William the Conqueror and everybody else, this stuff has been spoken for. They've assigned out land to, the nobles and to their knights and all that kind of stuff. All of a sudden, Ireland opens up, and all these Anglo-Normans, Henry's pointing over there and being like, hey, we just got some new shit. You guys head over there. Go ahead and settle what you want. Don't worry about the locals. If you want it, go ahead and take it. But let them know that they can work the land if you want.
Yeah.
They can pay you rent. They can keep working the land. But as far as they're concerned, you actually now own that place.
Strongbow gets a nice little tie back in here. He would actually be given back Leinster in 1173. I don't remember what war the British and the French were fighting. It might have been the War of the Roses. Who the fuck? I mean, somebody knows. There's no way of knowing for us right now because I didn't look into it. He ends up getting Leinster back in 1173 and tries to make incursions into Munster. And in 1174, he ends up getting defeated. So the Irish had gotten their shit together in a handful of years to be like, all right, we're not letting this guy do what he did before.
This is a common theme for, I think, like the next 200 years. When you think of Ireland, you think of like the hedge road, like much like you kind of maybe think of Britain, but you see these large hedge road fields. Irish castles are definitely something you think of when you think of Ireland,
for sure,
like Celtic and everything. This stuff is all brought over by the Normans. I think we talked about this during the monarchy episode, as castles are some weirdly French Norman thing. Yeah. They just brought them over and started building them. There's, I think, 30,000 either castles or ruins of castles in Ireland.
So many castles.
It's insane. So you get castles brought to Ireland by the Normans. The hedgerows are a thing that the Normans brought over to Ireland. Those didn't exist. They have these texts that basically were, I don't know if they were written by the church, but they were basically these propaganda pieces that were written describing what the Irish people were like. These things had fucking a woman having sex with a goat in the book. I shit you not. There's an image of a goat, like with a woman. It's got a fucking boner and like it's got its tongue out and the woman is looking like she's kissing it.
Wow.
So they just described them as this, basically these Neanderthals and everything. But apparently not Neanderthal enough, because the next 200 years basically sees the Normans only having power within these like cities and towns that they've established.
The Pale, correct?
Not just in there.
Later?
That's going to come into play for Dublin a little later. But yeah, the area around Dublin is what they consider the Pale. So like you're either in the Pale or beyond the Pale. And it just reminds me of the Jim Gaffigan stand up, which explains how he actually got that.
Yeah.
But these tribes, that are still these Irish, Celtic tribes, Gaelic tribes, are just coming in and raiding these places. And I mean, even though they're bringing in more people, the Anglo-Normans really can't do a whole lot to stop this.
Well, this is a common theme that I picked up on that we didn't get with Scotland. Ireland is basically what England wants to do when they're not fighting France. Mm-hmm. Like there's so many resources that they're putting to either fighting in France or fighting at home against France that what's going on in Ireland is kind of an out of sight, out of mind. Whereas Scotland, you are sharing the same land mass and you're kind of wedged in between the Scottish when they're aggressive and then the French when they're aggressive. So you always kind of have to be playing both sides of that. Eventually, when you can take a breath and you don't have to be dealing with the French and you don't have to be dealing with the Scottish, then you can look over into Ireland and you can be like, okay, let's clean this up. Let's go in there. Let's completely topple their way of life and how they've kind of figured out how to live because we still need to assert influence there. And then eventually the French will come back and do something to England. And they're like, all right, we got to leave for a little while. We'll be back eventually, depending on when we can wrap this thing back up with the French. Just kind of do what you want to do. And this is where the idea of kings having children that are given these positions of power over these different areas, we get the future King John.
Yes.
The future King John, the son of Henry II.
So this is the instance would be you have Prince of Wales now. Yep. Prince of Wales is essentially the prince in waiting to become the King of England.
He was the Lord of Ireland, I believe, is what his title was.
Yep.
I got two different numbers on it. It was either 1185 or 1177. Don't know why they couldn't figure it out that he's the Lord of Ireland. And King John, as we talked about in the monarchy episode, is one of my favorite people in history. Because
just a grade A shitbird. There's a reason why there's no John II. Yep. It's because you took a name because you were essentially paying homage and you wanted people to associate you with that previous king line. Yeah, no other Johns. That's how bad he is.
King John was so bad that his first incursion over into Ireland, he promptly pissed off the kings of Ireland because he was pulling on their beards as they were talking to him. This is basically an adult. He still, I think he was like 19, 20, something like that. He was pulling on another grown man's beard that was the king of the area.
Much older, much more seasoned. I see him doing the thing where they're trying to talk and he's doing the lip, and he's like, you guys sound so crazy. I wish you guys could hear how you sound to me.
Spit out those marbles. Give me what you're talking about. I just speak to me in English. So immediately those kings are like, ooh, we got to figure this out. They actually write to Henry and they say, get him off our island. We don't want him here. I'm sure Henry's like, yeah, I get it. Why do you think I shipped him down to you guys? Because I got tired of him being here.
He was in Wales before this and he was still fucking too close. Why do you think I conquered you guys? I need someplace to send my shitbag kid.
As King Henry dies, we get Richard the Lionheart that comes to power. He would attempt to kind of spread into his Irish lands a little bit. But of course, we know Richard the Lionheart ends up going down and takes care of, not Salas.
The Saladin.
Saladin, yes.
Yeah. Richard Lionheart, guy spent a total of like 6 months during his rule in actual England.
His homelands aren't ever going to be someplace that he inhabits quite often.
Yeah.
He ends up dying unceremoniously, coming back from, I don't even think it was coming back from the Crusades. It was like a separate mission that he was on.
In France or something like that, yeah.
King John. We get King John that assumes the throne in 1199, and King John was such a colossal fuck up that he led to the Magna Carta, the first king in the history of English kings, which again wasn't super long at that point, but probably in full kings, that had to create a document to limit his own powers so his people wouldn't rise up and kill him. This is where we get the Magna Carta. And again, the Magna Carta would also be used in Ireland, which he spent less time in, but I'm sure they saw the whole beard incident, and now that guy who's king, they're like, we got to set some rules here. There's going to be no pulling of beards. You're going to have to respect our rule as we're going to semi-respect you. We'll pay tribute. We'll do this and that. But at the same time, maybe a hands-off approach for you down here is going to be better.
It got bad enough under English rule in Ireland that, I mean, there was atrocities being committed. Basically, the people that were native there had no rights. Like, people were being, killed and everything like that. People were being oppressed. And at some point, there was a plea that was sent from, like, the Irish leaders. It was led by this guy named Domhnall O'Neill, and actually sent it to the Pope, basically being like, you probably don't know the shit that's going on up here in Ireland and everything like that, but the English are just like beating the shit out of us. And we're Catholic.
Yeah, same team.
Like, we're same team. Like, and we just want to make sure you're aware of this because we don't think that you would allow this to happen. This thing was called the Remonstrance of Princes that they actually sent, this plea they sent to the Pope. Pope looks at it, reads it. He's like, forward this to Edward II, who's now the king of fucking England. So he's basically like, hey, you know that country that you're taking over right now? They're fucking, it's like talking shit on a text message and you accidentally, they just send it to somebody else. That's what he does. He basically is just like, hey, they wrote me this. I figure you'd want to go ahead and read it.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, we do need to take a bathroom break.
Go.
Well, hey there, all you sexy historians. How you guys doing?
It is time for
socials.
Where can they find us on Instagram?
If they want to follow us, they can find us at Historically High Pod on Instagram.
That goes the same for Threads as well. You can also find us on Twitter.
Tell them about Twitter.
Historically High. That's Historically HI on Twitter.
And if you want to email any of your comments or suggestions, where can they find us at, Adam?
At Historically High Podcast at gmail.com.
Gmail. All right, and back to the show. All right, so we come to 1297, I'm doing quotes here, the Parliament of Ireland.
It's a pretty big step. I know that it kind of becomes a joke and eventually it gets taken away really without any pushback. But at the same time, as a nation that's building itself from where it came from, now you are getting this English influence. But at the same time, you are trying to define a role of governance for your area, which is a major step in like civilization.
You've got enough of your people in there that you now need to establish a way for them to run themselves. You feel like it's under control and they can go ahead and kind of handle things and you don't have to pay as close of attention.
And like we talked about, the English would center themselves in kind of this pale region of Ireland that was around Dublin. English kings would begin enforcing to try to stop this Gaelicization. We'll go with Gaelization of these Anglo-Irish people because they're coming in there. They're hanging out just like the Vikings did. They're finding women that are Irish that they're marrying. They're kind of pulling themselves away from England, just like you were talking about those Romans that pulled themselves away from Rome when they were on the Hadrian Wall. Like, you're so far removed from England that it just doesn't matter.
You're living life without the supervision of someone standing right behind you, and you're starting to enjoy the freedom, but you're also now realizing that the decisions that are being passed on to you of ways to do things aren't exactly the best ways to do things, and you're like, why are you telling me how to do? You're not here. You don't see how things are going here. So you get this, it's going to be a huge recurring theme. You're going to get this weird kind of thing about home rule. It's not going to come into play even as close to as, big as it does kind of in the future.
Yeah.
But you kind of have a situation where it's like, okay, let us, the people that are loyal to you, we're still paying all our shit we're still English, all that, kind of let us establish a way to run ourselves. We know how to do it best here.
It's a step away from that, though, that I think is what England gets scared of. As soon as you start thinking for yourself, it
is. But at the same time, those people that are saying that are then in charge of all these other people that are like, we don't even want you here.
Yeah.
And now you're setting up you're setting up shop even more.
Yeah, you start listening to the voice of defiance a lot more than the voice of your people. 1366, we get the Statutes of Kilkenny that forbade intermarriage, required all English people there to learn English and make sure that that's the only language that they use. They pushed to try to get rid of the act of hurling, the sport of hurling. Very interesting. We'll have to go into some Irish sports at some point. I don't know if that's a Patreon episode, but they got some fun stuff. In lieu of archery, in lieu of more domesticated European endeavors.
Why are you not chasing your foxes on horses?
Yeah. And they said, of course, this is to keep the war muscle sharp, because if you're firing a bow, it's going
because you have to fight for us. Remember.
Yeah. It's going to lend a lot more. Governed by this English common law that came over with them instead of the Brehon law that was Irish, that had kind of ruled the land for forever. It was enacted in 1367 and just pretty much roundly ignored. Just didn't even really quite give a shit about it. 1494 pointing, and again, that's a situation where they can put this into law all they want, but unless they're going to come over and enforce it, who's going to, if everybody's in agreement that they don't want to do it, nobody's going to tattle. Like, just keep living your life.
So part of the reason for this as well, something happens in 1348 that we've done an episode on, and this is when the Black Plague actually hits Ireland. And when it hits them, as we talked about during the Black Plague episode, the areas that were hit the most were the most condensed populous areas, because that's how the Black Plague was able to spread. There wasn't a lot of... That was the whole reason that there was that rise of the middle class, is because all the farmers and peasants actually survived it. And all of a sudden, when it came down to taking stock of who was still alive, it was like, oh yeah, the landowners aren't here. There's a ton of people not willing to work the land. We're going to start charging you more. In this scenario, all of the Anglo-Normans were all centered in these populated areas. And so they took the hardest hits, where all of like the native Celtic and Irish people were all spread out and everything. So they didn't suffer as much.
So the English law of finders keepers.
Yeah.
It goes into effect for the Irish people.
Hey man, that's our plague. But it ends up leading to this, exodus, where a lot of these Anglo-Normans are like, hey, we're heading back to England. And it ends up leaving them in a weakened position, which is why they have to start, really pushing to enact these legislature things where they're trying to gain a political kind of control over the area instead of just land related.
1494 is the ultimate, because Poynings law requires the Irish Parliament legislation to be approved by an English council. So you guys can have that cute little Parliament thing that you guys are working on over there. It's 100 plus years old. Take it from us. We've been doing this for a lot longer. Whatever you want to try to pass through for Ireland, make sure we can get a look at it first.
Yeah, so basically it's a sub-parliament. You guys get to go ahead and do stuff. You then ship it back to us. We'll talk about it during our parliament, and we'll see if we approve of it.
We'll get to it when we get to it. There's a lot of business that we have to attend to over here.
One thing that actually happens too as a result of the Black Plague is this rise in like Irish poetry and this big kick on it. And it's, when they explained it, it's kind of the same thing of making, telling tales in song form. It's so much easier to remember a song. And so to pass this like oral history and this oral tradition, they actually start creating poetry in order for this stuff to kind of continue to exist. What this also allows is these figures within Ireland that are trying to build like a reputation for themselves about their deeds and about essentially their standing, is they're having these poems created to like spread their reputation. So if they decide essentially to come invade your land or anything like that, you've already heard of them through this poem that came through their village 6 months ago or a year ago.
It's a theory that I have, and it doesn't really apply to everybody, but there is kind of a beauty in struggle where it pushes the creative mind to do things that I think become art a lot faster.
You have to have an outlet for like the pain and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's rap music again. I'm not drawing parallels 100%, but it always...
You're not drawing parallels between James Joyce and fucking Jay-Z?
Yeah, no. But when you're coming up and you don't have anything and you're out on the streets hustling and you're struggling, the art that you make and the songs that you write tend to have a little bit more passion in them. And just like in this time, when you've seen probably the worst thing that you've ever seen with the Black Plague coming through and killing everybody, you need an outlet for that pain, and you start writing these poems and these great works and making these great works of art that stand the test of time because they came out of a time when you didn't have anything but that to share. And that is a cornerstone of so many different histories of the world is usually when struggle happens, everything that pops out of it is roses. I mean, this is how the Renaissance happens.
Yeah. During this time too, you have the English having to, clash with the Scottish again. So that's drawing their attention kind of away from the governance of Ireland. And because of that, and there's not, so many sets of eyes on Ireland, you get this just constant assimilation of these Normans into kind of this Irish culture and kind of a little bit more pro-Irish, I think.
Yeah. And you have to come together. And when you have to come together, you can start kind of forming. This isn't where home rule comes back. Technically, we aren't even to where home rule is an issue at this point, but it's coming very quickly down the pike. But when you can try to bring back the languages that were trying to be stomped out by the English, it becomes a national identity again.
Yeah. 1509, Henry VIII starts seeing some problems with the lords over in Ireland. He's like, you guys are going, I guess you would consider
it. Huh? 7th or 8th?
The 8th.
Okay. This is the major conflictory.
Oh, yeah. This is, as much as McDermott was responsible for some shit kicking off and like the change in Irish history, this is bigger actually.
Yeah.
So he sees some problems with the Lords of Ireland. I guess the term would be like maybe they're going a little too native for his taste. And so he actually makes these moves to structure Ireland under Henry, but then they get autonomy. So he's basically just saying, hey, I'm watching you guys a little bit closer. You guys can keep doing what you're doing, but kind of watch what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like watch your step. I got eyes. Now, Henry had not had a son, so he didn't have an heir. And I think he had multiple daughters and everything, but he's looking at his wife at this point and he's like, honey, you're fucking up. Like you haven't given me a son yet, but he can't divorce her and try to have sex with someone else to create an actual legitimate heir. Well, he can have sex with other people. It's just not a legitimate heir at that point.
Yeah. Catholicism, divorce is not a thing.
Yeah.
You're mated for life.
So Henry goes to the Pope and he's like, hey, I'm going to need you to kind of like get this thing taken care of. Dress it up however you want to dress it up, but I'm going to need to start trying to put something inside somebody else and have it be a legitimate heir. And the Pope's like, no, like, do you realize like if we let you do that, that's everyone's going to know.
Everybody's going to do it.
And then we're going to say only kings can do that? Like, no, that's going to make us lose our legitimacy. So Henry's like, you know what? Fine. If you're not going to let me do it, then there's another church that will let me do it. And they're like, oh yeah, what church? And he's like, the Church of England. He's like, I'm creating my own church. And this leads into what's going to be known as the Protestant Reformation. Basically, King Henry not being able to divorce his wife causes him to create an entire revolution.
The reason I love this story so much is because now we had the benefit of understanding how a child's sex is created. Mm-hmm. And it's solely dependent on the XY chromosome that gets sent over from the man. XX, female, female sex, XY, male sex.
It works itself out.
It's not his wife that's determining whether he has the son or not. It's him that's determining whether he has a son or not.
Yeah, but see, he's the king, so he's not going to admit that. He's not going to admit that he doesn't have kingly seed.
No. Man ends up having 6 wives. I believe 2 of them were beheaded. 4 of them were annulled instead of divorced. At the same time, now we run into a massive issue because King Henry has created the Protestant Reformation in the Church of England, which means that all of the English subjects have to then convert from Catholicism to Protestantism.
Can you imagine that? He's making the declaration. He's like, people, you will no longer be Catholic. And everyone's like, what the fuck? He's like, it's cool. We're doing our own thing. You're all going to be Protestant from now on. What's the reason? The reason is not important.
No reason.
You know what? The church was taking so much money that we can now like make sure, we all get that money. By we all, I get to keep that money. But it's cool. By the way, this is my new wife.
Same name. Still Queen Anne, just a different Anne.
We're making it easy for you.
Yeah, this becomes a massive issue because you have the small amount of Anglo-Irish people over there that speak English, but you are going to have to try to convert an entire island that has already been basically converted twice from their original beliefs. And granted, they're not going back to the original settlers' beliefs or anything like that. But now you have to try to talk them out of something that they've swallowed hook, line, and sinker. And you have to do it in a way to where the people that still speak Gaelic and don't speak English have to understand that this is a legitimate material change between religions.
This is Ireland's thing. Catholicism is their thing at this point. You think that they've gotten over the fact that you're running shit in their country. They're not happy about that. All they have at this point is their religion to keep them going. And now you're going to pop in and being like, by the way, remember when we took over? We're going to need you to start praying like this from now on. And it wasn't possible to actually enforce this thing in Ireland. They were probably having enough trouble actually doing it in England itself that it was a pipe dream to think that they were going to have this full island, getting behind the Protestant Reformation.
Yeah. Then to make matters worse, Henry VIII in 1542 goes ahead and calls himself the King of Ireland. So now you have this guy who...
Where's that autonomy?
Yeah. Yeah, you're ruled by a guy that just creates this. This Tudor dynasty is nasty on England this entire time. After the Reformation that just shakes Ireland apart, you have a king who never really set foot in your land. But at the same time, the Catholic monarchies of Europe are like, you're not the King of Ireland. Mm-hmm. You're a Protestant now.
Yeah.
That's not how this works, pal.
You can't, Catholic king.
You can't change the religion and then try to get, not dignified,
not deified.
Confirmed basically by us that you're going to be the King of Ireland.
Yeah, at this point, the whole Protestant thing is really only happening in England. Mm-hmm. All the other countries around Europe are Catholic. They're looking at Ireland, which is still majority Catholic, and they're like, technically, you're not even the King of England.
Yep.
Like, the church is telling us not to even recognize you as the King of England because you're Protestant. Like, how are you going to go ahead and sell us on this Ireland stuff?
Well, then we get the pendulum swinging back and forth. The papacy and the rest of these Catholic monarchies in Europe would not recognize another king or queen of England until Queen Mary I because she was Catholic again. Mm-hmm. She comes to power in 1553. Then everything's set right because we have a Catholic Queen of England that can now be considered a Catholic Queen of Ireland because that's what all the people are over there. And now we're back in the good graces. Like the swapping back and forth of England from Catholicism to Protestantism that just continues on from this time forward. King Henry set that all up. That was his choice alone to make that just materially changed the makeup of how society was going to get along. And not just England and not just these other societies, but Ireland as a whole is just its own little area that now has to fight this holy war. And it's not even a holy war because it's still Christian.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a different sect. All the guys are still the same.
It's fighting over Coke and Pepsi.
Yeah, exactly. You got anything before 1593?
Okay, so when does Queen Elizabeth come in with the Elizabethan War?
Ooh.
That's a little bit before, because in 1572, there's some stuff going on in France. So at some point, Queen Elizabeth, I want to say that maybe Queen Elizabeth was actually before Mary, because she was also Protestant. And then there were areas in Ireland during this Elizabethan War thing.
She wouldn't have had a long run.
No, I don't think she did. But this is where you kind of get the divide between the Protestants in the north kind of siding with the crown, where the others in the south kind of rebel. And it's this thing called the Elizabethan War. 1572, France. You have these Catholic death squads that are starting to hunt Protestants.
Any kind of death squad's a bad deal.
No. And then the Pope is actually like celebrating this shit. And Protestants are basically like, okay, well, obviously mainland Europe is no longer safe, so we're going to actually take refuge in England.
Yeah, it's a holy war.
Well, Catholic troops actually come to, I'm trying to think, who the fuck is Desmond? I just wrote a name down here. Desmond is somebody. But anyway, some Catholic troops end up landing in Ireland. Elizabeth sends in some other troops, and they're actually going to have a little bit of a skirmish in Ireland. So the church is like, hey, we're going to protect the Catholics in Ireland. And Elizabeth is like, we're going to be sending the Protestant side, and we're going to go and have a little fight, but we're not going to do it on either of our soil. We're going to do it on this neutral territory that is Ireland. And this is where you actually get Sir Walter Raleigh coming over to Ireland. Ulster, one of the kingdoms that we talked about in the north, it was the most Gaelic in Ireland. It was the most Gaelic in Ireland, exactly.
It will change.
Now, this guy that is actually there in Ulster named Hugh O'Neill, did you have anything on him?
Yeah, he's the Earl of Tyrone.
Yep. So he actually ends up turning against Elizabeth as well and siding with the sides of like the Catholics and like the pro like Native Irish and everything.
Where does it go? Spain.
Oh, that's right.
Goes and talks to the Catholics in Spain and says, hey, we need some reinforcements up here.
Well, he teams up with a guy named Chieftain Red Hugh O'Donnell. So you got Hugh O'Neill, you got the two Hughes, O'Donnell and O'Neill. And that's kind of how he starts his kind of building up his power base, is once he ends up kind of stirring up the rebels in the South and everything like that, because he's like, hey, you know I'm not completely native to here, but there's this chieftain. He's on board with me. Mm-hmm. You guys can get on board with us. We'll have a pretty sizable force, and we can maybe, take down Elizabeth and kind of gain our independence or whatever. And so as he starts winning, the rebels in the South start getting stirred up down in Munster, and O'Neill ends up playing the Catholic card to try to rally support. So he's just like, yeah, Catholics are totally cool and everything like that. Like, you guys are fine with me. And they're like, aren't you like basically like Protestant and everything? He's like, nah, don't worry about that. He's like, we're totally good. We're going to go and rally support. Everyone is going to rally around the Catholic cause.
The English people are the problem.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I've technically been here for a little while and everything. So I'm just one of you guys. I'm just, I don't have the red hair or anything like that. And I don't speak just like you guys. But he ends up being declared the Captain General of Catholicism, or of the Catholic Army in Ireland. The Pope is like, this guy's the guy. So now all of a sudden he has papal backing. And in 1601, the Spanish are looking at this, Catholic as well, and that's when they decide to invade Ireland against the English as well.
And this is during the 9 Years' War.
Yes, this is where you get the kind of joint force of the Spanish and the Irish. They got 9,000 men against the English with 6,000 men, and this is where Kinsale comes in.
Kinsale?
Kinsale, the city. It's like the city where this battle happens.
Gotcha.
And O'Neill and O'Donnell, the Spanish are kind of like their own thing. O'Neill and O'Donnell are kind of their own separate force, but they're all working together. So I can't remember which one it is, O'Donnell or O'Neill. One of them like sends out this battle charge or something like that basically alerts the English that they're coming. They're on two separate hilltops, and I don't know where the Spanish are at this point. But all of a sudden, the other one, let's just say O'Neill is the one that throws up the shout. O'Donnell hears it, and he's like, oh shit, he's in trouble. They pull off this hill and evacuate their position down into like this little valley. The English see that, and they have cavalry, and they're like, take the hill.
Yeah, take the high ground.
They go and take the hill, and all of a sudden they're charging with their cavalry downhill at these Irish forces. And apparently the English had stirrups at this point. The Irish didn't. And when you have stirrups and you're able to kind of keep yourself on the horse, you can use a lance and you can charge in at full speed. The Irish would be able to have lances, but they would be able to they wouldn't be able to knock someone off a horse or anything, because it would just throw them back off the horse. Yeah. So they had this huge advantage, and the English cavalry end up just mowing through these forces that are now out of position due to lack of communication. The Spanish see this, and they're like, yeah, this ain't for us. They end up bailing, and they actually don't come back. The Spanish are like, they just end up washing their hands of it.
We were supposed to be here in a support role. We were going to have to take the main thrust of this because you guys can't communicate.
Yeah, so it ends up with like 800 Spanish, combination of Spanish and Irish dead. The Spanish are out. The Irish end up having to retreat back all the way up north to Ulster. And then the English end up attacking Ulster. O'Neill surrenders, but is somehow able to keep both his title and then like a portion of his land.
Yet Charles Blunt and Lord Mountjoy, I believe, were the two that put O'Neill into submission. But again, as you say, it's kind of like you just gave up. This was kind of like an armistice at this point in time. But at the same time, these two guys had just completed this Tudor conquest of Ireland. Mm-hmm. They had shut down, they had won the 9 Years' War. This area that you're talking about up north in Ulster is subdued, and you have the power base again. You have control.
And then what you do in that scenario, the agitators, the area in which there was, those people were the cause of it, you just simply send in more Anglo-Normans into that area to make sure that you have a larger buildup of forces. You're basically putting more eyes there to keep track of who were the previous agitators.
Well, then you get James VI, James I, James VI of Scotland and the First of England, because we have the union of crowns that happened between Scotland and England, goes ahead and looks at that Ulster region and looks at the massive buildup of Catholics up there, and he starts sending the Scottish down in these plantations to create the plantations of Ulster.
Yeah, I know we took your guys' land, but we're all on the same team now, so we've got a gift for you, a little peace offering. You guys can go start settling this area. 1607, O'Neill and O'Donnell both leave to go to Europe.
Was this the flight of the Lords?
I think that's what it was.
Okay.
Yep, and that's when England kind of realized at that point over the next, the following years, they're like, the Catholic thing, it's always going to be an issue. It's always going to be a threat. We need to figure out a way to do that. That's when King James puts basically thousands of these Protestants in Ulster. They take over, they start modernizing it, basically in line with where England is as far as their modernization.
Yeah, these pro-Union Protestants are now down there holding this land and subjugating these Catholics to work on these large plantation tracts of land.
And usually it would just be like, hey, are you a lord or a noble? Here, go run this land. You're going to have all this local populace to work it. That didn't work for them before. So what they start doing is they basically just try to move the equivalent of English society over there. And they're like, all of you people who maybe aren't landowners, but like you're middle class and you're in guilds and stuff like that, we're going to move you over because we're going to actually start Anglicizing Ireland. And we can't just have the lords there and then all of the Irish people still working there because they're going to be able to keep this. We need to bring England to them, and then that's what's going to solidify our power base.
We give them an English social structure, they're going to have no choice. If we continue to build people on the rungs above them, they can't rise up.
And you mentioned the Scots. It also is advantageous because apparently, like, the Scots hate fucking Catholics.
Yeah.
And so you're moving a hostile force down there to pretty much also exert control and keep an eye on them.
And Ulster becomes a massive region. This is a big fight that will lay itself out pretty much from here on out.
1625, Charles I ends up taking the crown. And basically this dude is like a 180 from the previous kings. He's more of like a casual Protestant, and he's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. I guess everyone else before me has been Protestants. The country is, I don't want to create waves, but he's like a pretty tolerant Protestant. And so he doesn't have an issue with the Catholics like other kings have. He's not making it his mission to kind of snuff out this Catholicism. And this pisses off the hardcore Protestants, including the guy that you probably have added to one of your history's greatest shitbags list. Is it Oliver Cromwell?
Yeah. Yeah, Cromwell's a bad guy. Charles, for his lack of hate towards the Catholics, had a pretty solid, hard, fast rule that the king's word meant everything.
Yeah.
And this is when we have a parliament in England that's kind of trying to push king total rule out for parliament running the country. Mm-hmm. So you have these parliamentarians that start to push back against King Charles, and you get the Wars of the Three Kingdoms that started in 1639. Charles clashed with the English Parliament because he said, I need this rule. You guys have no authority over me. You follow what I do. So this royalist side is under Charles' control. As you were just talking about, Catholics pretty cool in Charles' book. So you get the support of the Irish and then all of these Catholics that are still in England that are the minority now, but are still supporting Charles because he protects them.
And in Ireland, they're a huge majority.
Yeah. You have the parliamentarians that believe that this king shouldn't have absolute power. So these Protestants that are supporting Parliament now become fans of the parliamentarian cause. The Scottish are right in there too, right behind Parliament.
Yeah, they've never been a fan of the king.
Yeah. So by 1649, through this Three Kingdoms War, Charles ends up getting executed. And they have to go down and subdue all of these former royalist Catholics in Ireland. And Cromwell gets the tap on the shoulder to head down there. He might be the worst guy in the story.
He's a fucking war criminal.
Yeah. Cromwell had a 4-year campaign in Ireland. It started August 15th, 1649. The total losses in Ireland are around 700,000 people. Some estimates, obviously these estimates always vary. I'm going to go with 700,000 because not only are you talking about the people that he killed, but just the people that he displaced and all of the crops and shit that he burned that happened. Between 200,000 and 600,000 citizens, 20,000 soldiers, and tens of thousands of indentured laborers that end up getting moved around to other parts of the English kingdom. Large-scale confiscation of all of these Catholic-owned lands. They established Protestant supremacy over Ireland for the next 2 centuries was the damage that Cromwell had done to this area after this war.
He was only there for when did he first go over to Ireland?
1649.
Okay, he was only there for a
4
year.
years, wasn't it?
He himself was there for a year. He basically got the ball rolling, got the momentum. He leaves his son-in-law in charge and then basically just instructs him. He's like, just scorched earth. He's like, make them pay, make them suffer, make it to where they're not able to do this type of thing or build up this type of resistance again.
Yeah, the pre-war population in Ireland was 1.5 million. If you wiped out 700,000 people, that's damn near half the population of Ireland.
Yeah, and in 52, so not long after he headed back to England, there's this thing called the Act of Settlement, which basically strips estates and land from all of these Catholic families that have had this for generations and everything, and then basically forces them to move over to the West Coast. There's a river that kind of divides the middle of Ireland.
Yeah.
Everything west of that, they were like, you pack your shit, you lost your land, you're heading over there, whatever you do over there, figure it out. But this is all, the property of England now. It's always been the property of England as far as we're concerned, but now we're going to be giving it to, all of these Protestant people that are coming over.
Trail of Tears type shit.
Yeah. By the end of the 1650s, only 15% of the land in Ireland remained in Catholic hands.
I want to say it was 5,000 families or something like that held the land.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it, it's going to play a factor. But if you have to subsistence farm, if you have to create your own food and everything like that, you need these tracts of land.
Well, here's the other thing too. Someone comes in, takes the land, and all of a sudden they're like, where do we go? And they're like, well, you can work it. You can still do what you're doing. I'm just, you're just not going to get the benefit of you own it. You're going to be paying me for it. Maybe you'll pay me rent and everything to farm some of the land. You'll get to keep a little bit of it, but it's all going to me. Fuck that. I'll take my chances west.
Yeah. Well, it's all going to me. And then it's also what I keep or what I don't keep goes back to England. So it goes to your suppressors. It's just such a bad slope to go down. And again, this established Protestant rule for the next 2 centuries.
Do you have anything about Louis XIV?
No.
Okay, so the reason I want to discuss this is because all of this is happening outside of Ireland, but it all kind of leads into a lot of this thought of rebellion and how it can be possible. So we have Louis XIV. He's the King of France. He's Catholic, and King of France, he's wanting to go ahead and stretch his legs, and so Prince William of Holland, William the Orange, he is looking at this and he's like, This isn't looking too hot. And so King James II is also Catholic. So you have Catholic France, You have Catholic King of England, and then you have, I believe, Prince William, who is Protestant. All of a sudden, all the Protestants, because again, England is mostly Protestant, and now you have a Catholic king, this is going to cause some issues for the Protestants. They ask William, they're like, hey, if you come and get rid of and usurp James, we'll go ahead and make you king. You can be king of England. You're Protestant, so you can, we're all good there. So William comes over. James ends up bouncing and heading for France and is like, Louis, we're related at some point. We're family to some degree.
Yep.
Listen, we're both Catholic. Pope likes us both. I'm going to need your help taking care of William. I need to get England back. And so
Taking care of James.
Take care of William, who's now in control of England.
William and Mary.
Correct.
Okay.
So Louis is like, yep, I'm going to help you raise an army. We're going to go ahead and first invade Ireland. Because what we need to do is we need to go ahead and kind of weaken and destabilize the British kingdom. And then that way it'll cause some, friction. He'll have to send troops over there. Maybe then the French will send troops over to England. We'll be able to get this thing sorted out. So they end up, James lands and gathers Irish support because he's Catholic. The majority of the country is Catholic. And they end up making it to Londonderry, which is all the way in the north.
Let's just call it Derry.
Derry, sorry. All the way to Derry in the north, but that's where essentially the Protestants' power base is, and they're unable to actually finish the fight. Delays them enough to where William ends up showing up from England. They fight. William wins. Protestants get to stay in power, but regardless, Catholicism is still the religion of the country. So the Protestants are it's the same shit we're dealing with now, man. They're this small group, the minority, but they hold all the power.
Yeah. To ensure that power, there was the Test Act of 1672 that just barred all Catholics and non-conforming Protestants from Irish Parliament. Mm-hmm. So you don't even get a chance.
You don't have a voice.
Yeah. There's nothing that you can do. And if you're a poor Protestant too, or if you're not a poor Protestant, but if you're kind of halfway, if you're half in, half out, you don't get a chance at it either.
You're a passenger this entire time. You never get a say.
Yeah, the push that they made with these penal laws that took more civil rights away from Catholics and took more of this hereditary property, this stuff that had been handed down for forever.
So like you said, banned from Parliament.
Yep.
Banned from buying land. Banned from holding any public office. And banned from voting.
It's a lot of bans.
Yeah.
What can you really do besides just survive and work for a Protestant?
Well, you could be a dude named William Conley. Billy Conley, not the actor, the OG William Conley. This dude is from an Irish family who actually converted from Catholicism over to Protestants and made a lot of money off basically reclaiming this land that was taken from Catholics to make his wealth. And he kind of, from describing him, you'd be like, well, this guy is obviously a Protestant hero. He's obviously going to go against the Irish.
Yeah.
Not really. He ends up being one of the most well-known figures and kind of heroes in Irish history.
Are we talking about the United Irishmen? Or are we still pre-United Irishmen?
What year is that?
That's 1798 or 1791.
We're well before that.
Okay.
Yeah. So during this time, Dublin continues to boom. They get their independent parliament. All that kind of stuff happens. The song that is, oh God, I'm trying to think of how it goes. It doesn't go like that. It's not hallelujah, but it's, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Yeah, the one from Home Alone.
Yes. So that is actually a song that was written in 1742. Dude writes this song because this is when the famine is going on.
The Great Frost.
The Great Frost, the Great Famine, the whatever you want to call it. The first. Yeah, there's multiple famines. Sorry. Famine numero uno. You get all of these people who are sick from this famine and everything. This guy basically gets tapped. He's like, we'd like you to write a song that could kind of cheer up the people of Ireland. And the first time that song was performed, how popular it is and how many people know that song, the first time was performed in Dublin. But
Interesting.
again, that happens kind of at the tail end of this famine that takes place. The first one in 1739. It lasts for 2 or 3 years till 1741. This thing kills up to 400,000 people.
Yeah. Yeah, lower estimates were 250,000, which would be an eighth of the population. So it's just, even up to 400,000, that's 40% of the population almost. Like, it's just, actually, it's not. It's like 20% of the population. But that's so many people. And especially after you talk about Cromwell just coming in, not super recently, but prior to that, pretty soon, wiping out that many people as well.
A combination of that and just the constant pressure of religious prosecution kind of sees this one of the first migrations to the New World for the Irish. This rolls right into 1775 for the American Revolution.
Yeah.
You have people that are over there that are Irish that are taking part in the American Revolution because they're fighting against the fucking British who they don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Ulster has immigrants that are there fighting directly for like the Continental Army. And as they're fighting, they're sending word of the revolution back to Ireland. And all of a sudden they're like, okay, shit, like it is possible to fight against the British. They're a lot further away than we are.
Yeah.
And everything. But from what we're hearing from people over there, it turns out that it's going pretty well. And after the British lose the American colonies, they start to get worried about all their other territories. And so they turn and look at Ireland and they're just like, we need to make sure this place stays locked down.
What could be more eye-opening for Ireland, though, than to see the American Revolution, to hear the American Revolution?
Someplace much closer to home.
Yeah.
1789, we get the French Revolution. What happens during the French? Here's the deal. American Revolution just ends in independence. French Revolution ends up in the death of the king.
And a republic being born.
All of a sudden, you're looking at this much closer to home and you're seeing the framework of what just happened in France. All these monarchies around Europe are looking at France and being like, oh shit. Like,
Bad.
Yeah, this, we can't let this get out to the common folk. And the Irish are looking, you know, the meme where the guy's walking with his girlfriend, but he's turning back and looking. It's like the girl that's holding his hand is England. The dude is Ireland. And he's looking back at France being like, ooh, I like the look of that.
Who couldn't? I mean, you're seeing what you've wanted play out in two different areas. Not only are you seeing the English lose control of a colony, but then you see the king, which you're not really a fan of, fall in France. So you're seeing two different examples of not only how to secure your independence, but then how to build your own republic. You're not just supplanting, or you're not just taking yourself out of England's control to give yourself another king of Ireland. You're seeing a society that is now foregoing a king and moving into a republic where people have control, where they have rule. Not to mention, there's a shitload of subjugated Catholics that can't vote or hold political office or do anything else that would immediately get their voice back had they become a republic.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's just such a huge change. 1798, you get all of this fervor that's starting to boil over in the Irish Rebellion that was organized. It was organized by a group named the United Irishmen that had started in 1791 in Belfast, so in North Ireland, around the Ulster region. They're trying to secure this republic. They see the blueprints now. Unfortunately, they don't have all of the past history of France to realize how it's come to this point. So their starting block is a little bit further beyond what France started to overthrow their king and just immediately get squashed by crown forces. This, in turn, kind of opens England's eyes like, shit, they found out about what happened in France. We need to figure out how to make sure that Ireland can't just try to come in and do this. We have to try to get closer.
Well, here's the thing, too, is during this kind of creation of the United Irishmen, this is a group started in Belfast. They're Protestants who decide that it's basically time to unite Ireland. They're willing to join with the Catholics and the Ulster descendants and everything. So you get three separate groups that are in here with segments of them kind of wanting the same thing of this unified Ireland, form the United Irishmen. And this word terrifies religious institutions, but they want a secular republic. They're willing to say, you guys be Catholic, we be Protestant, but this isn't what's going to govern our
nothing
society.
comes into government.
Nothing comes into government. And this fucking terrifies pretty much the entire church, but also a lot of areas just throughout Europe who are looking at this and being like, okay, shit, France just did their thing, and now Ireland's wanting to go ahead and take it a step further. So 1793, England and France start fighting. Of course, they flip a coin during that time frame, and England and France are fighting. Yeah. You get this dude named Theobald Wolfetone, who is one of the members of the United Irishmen. I'm just going to call him Wolf or Tone. Now, under kind of the rights, like you were saying about like the penal laws that were created, Catholics were declined, their voting rights and everything like that. Theobald Wolfetone was this guy that had actually started pushing to reinstate this. They got declined again, and this hampered pretty much the mission of the United Irishmen, because they were like, okay, what we need to do, we're Protestants, but a group of us are Catholics. We're trying to get everyone together. Everyone needs to have power to go ahead and get people into office, into parliament to make this change. Well, when you take half of the players off the board for their ability to do this legislatively, this completely derails the plans for the United Irishmen, and Tone goes off to France. And he's like, okay, here's the deal. They won't let the Catholics vote, so we can't essentially establish a representational parliament in order to take care of Ireland. You guys also are at war with the English. You don't like them. We're trying to also push them out of Ireland. And so the French are like, and again, they don't have a king at this point. They're being run by some type of, I don't know what the exact structure of the republic. We haven't done the French Revolution, have we?
No, but this is very close to Napoleon.
I know. So you get France being like, okay, we're going to help you guys out. We're going to send you guys 15,000 troops, 43 ships. From our knowledge, England probably has like 11,000 troops that they're able to actually have available there to respond to this. So we should be able to do this pretty handily.
Yeah, got numbers.
Yeah. They end up setting sail. They get with what they consider a biscuit's throw to Ireland. You can see it. And weather and bad command decisions on the side of the French basically result in the French turning around and leaving. They were close enough to where the English knew of the invasion and knew what was going on, and it leads to like immediate reprisals from the government. They go against all these people that are like known United Irishmen and all these groups that they figured were going to work against them once the French were, on the soil. And pretty much it just drives, by persecuting these during these reprisals, they're trying to snuff out this resistance.
Yeah.
All they do is show that they're the ones that are holding these people down, and just drives numbers to the United Irishmen. At this point, they have about 100,000 strong in the United Irishman army.
It's a pretty big force.
Oh, yeah, considering that 11,000 is what it was. I mean, I'm sure they bolstered their forces after kind of getting the wind of what the French were going to do. But yeah, 100,000 in this army. And this revolution is planned by the United Irishmen to kick off in the summer of 1798.
Didn't the French still end up landing some absurd, it was like 1,000 troops or something like that? Like they still tried.
Not enough to be effective.
No.
And everything, but yeah, it might have been like a token force that got there first or something like that. But as soon as they, knew that they couldn't send the reinforcements in, they were like, 1,000 aren't going to do anything. We're just going to lose 1,000 Frenchmen.
This is if you guys win, if you're victorious, remember we tried.
Yeah.
We sent some folks.
We put boots on the ground. They weren't there for very long. They turned around and got right back on the boats.
Very Mussolini approach to trying to get on the board.
And I don't know what leads to it. I don't know if the government gets wind of it or anything like that. But in May, like right before they're supposed to kick off this revolution, a ton of the leaders from the United Irishmen end up getting arrested, which derails like the larger overarching plan. But they had planned this to where, I guess, operating in like cells and everything all
network.
over. Yeah, exactly. It still fucking pops off. The cells are just like, so the big part of it's not going down. They're like, yeah, unfortunately, a bunch of guys got arrested. And like, fuck it, we're going anyway. everyone's organized. Let's go ahead and get this thing going. So it ends up popping off anyway. And this leads to, another division like we see in Ireland, where Ulster basically rallies to the crown out of fear of this secular, government that they're trying to install, feeling, as Protestants being the minority there, that if this thing goes through, the deal isn't going to be upheld on the Catholic side. They're just going to fucking murder all the Protestants or drive them out of Ireland. So they end up having, out of desperation, to turn and be like, yeah, I guess we're going to end up fighting with the crown on this one.
They're the same people. I mean, I think it's more of having the comfort of knowing that you came from Great Britain and that you're kind of happy with where your life is now, and to know that you would be separated out from Great Britain. And then, yeah, like you say, probably looked at poorly because you haven't lived in Ireland as long and you had these giant plantations that employed Catholic people, and you made your money off of the backs of somebody else. Yeah. So you're probably not going to be real big fans of...
There's a legitimate reason for you to actually probably be worried in this situation. Yeah. And I mean, as far as this, war goes that they're going to be getting into, the Irish are kind of working with one hand behind their back, because even though they're on their home turf, the English, this is their thing. They've been at war developing all this kind of stuff with France. Yeah. And so the Irish, the rebels, are definitely at a disadvantage when it comes to just like hardware and everything. Things aren't going great for them just kind of because of this disadvantage. When things kind of start turning south, they end up in this area called, I want to say it's Scola Rouge.
Great pronunciation.
Yeah. They end up getting about 100 Protestants locked inside this barn and then burn the barn down. So, I mean, there's nasty shit going on both sides. No one's innocent in this.
Nobody's hands are ever clean in
this. Oh,
no,
definitely not. But 30,000 people end up dying that summer.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
A hell of a lot of people.
Just over the course of that summer during this, that's a ton of people. Wolfetone ends up being captured, and I want to say he ends up dying. I'm trying to remember exactly how it happened. He ends up getting executed and becomes like a national martyr for the rebels and the kind of the free Irish, like independent Irish movement.
The United Irishmen.
But because he is kind of one of the linchpins holding this thing together, and because they've had these defeats and haven't really made any headway, the rebellion just kind of breaks apart. It was kind of built essentially to try to accomplish the mission. And if it didn't, there weren't like long-term plans on how to keep it together. And when they don't achieve the goals that they were supposed to within a certain timeline, it's just kind of the attitude of like, well, we tried. And the organization just kind of breaks down, and the unified rebellion breaks apart.
It's football offense. You script the first 25 some odd offensive plays of the game. And then after that, the coach has to be the one to start calling plays.
Yeah.
If you get your coaches all arrested, then eventually after you run out of those first 25 plays and you have nobody else to script or to call the rest of the offense, what can you do?
That's a goddamn perfect analogy.
Every once in a while, I can find them. The response from England, though, is, well, we didn't like that. That wasn't good. Maybe if we just hug them real tight and hold their body against our body, maybe Crown of Unions or Union of the Crowns. Maybe if we make them the same way that we did to Scotland and those unions of the Crown, if we bring them in, we suck their parliament into our parliament. They have representation. They're still a minority.
It's a union of the crowns without someone else having a crown.
Yeah.
It's what they consider. It's nice sounding. It's the acts of union. We're going to be one united kingdom on this. And as part of this, like you said, we're going to hold you guys tight so you guys can't fucking squirm and get away from us. And they knew that they couldn't just come in and do it by force, because these rebellions and these revolts and everything kept breaking out whenever they were trying to put too heavy of a hand down. So the Catholics were promised, like, listen, if this acts of union goes through, everyone agrees to it, we're going to go ahead and get rid of the penal law shit and everything like that. You guys will have full political rights for Catholics. And this is put forth by, I think, like both sides of the parliament. The king at this time is just like, no, we're not playing this compromise game. Like we're England, we're the English. Like we don't play ball with them. They submit to us.
We just put down the rebellion.
Yeah. Like what are we doing trying to go ahead and offer them like olive branches and like concessions? Like, no, this isn't happening.
Yeah. Were you at 1799?
Go ahead. Acts of Union was 1801, so go ahead and go back to 1799.
1799, first legislative attempt fails miserably. Just absolutely falls flat on its face because, again, you have a large sect in Ireland that's not very happy about this. And then you also have the people in England that are like, no, we're not going to sit in the same chamber as these guys. You can't just invite them into our parliament.
Yeah.
They don't know shit. They don't know how this works. Parliamentary procedure is probably like banging two rocks together in Ireland.
When we want information on potatoes, yeah, we'll call in a specialist.
So, 1800, there is just this massive bribery campaign. They are putting money in people's pockets. They're making backroom deals and promises to try to get this through because,
Normal
again,
political shit.
Yeah, it's not unlike anything that goes on today, probably. But they finally get enough to where they can secure this. 1800, the vote ends up passing. The Union of the Crown happened January 1st, 1801. Thanks, Caesar, for making sure that we have a new year that starts on January 1st. 1803, Robert Emmet, not very happy with this Union of the Crown, reignites this Irish rebellion. And once again, it fails. So now you've had a rebellion, you've had kind of bookend rebellions on this Union of the Crown to say that maybe Ireland and the people there weren't too pumped about this to begin with.
Yeah.
Maybe they shouldn't have done this. Catholic rights further get diluted, even though there were these promises on the other side that the king then said no to. Tenant farming continues. And I think this is where I got it. There were 5,000 families that held the most of the land. There was this emphasis that began to be put on cities over the countryside. So you have these small amount of families that are holding this land. Then you have to basically have tenant farmers that are taking pieces of this land to try to go ahead and subsist.
It was a pyramid scheme
Yes.
of like working the land. You'd have the owners. They would then go ahead and trust four people, divide the land between four. And these are huge swaths of land.
Yeah.
Give that to four people. They in then turn would divide it and be like, here's 10 people that you're going to go ahead and have work these areas. They would then subdivide that to this like peasant class and being like, now there's 50 of you that are actually going to be watching out. So it was this weird fucking pyramid scheme of working the land. But at the top of it was always going to be the Protestant class.
Yeah, an absentee owner that's probably not going to be there, not going to be around. They might be back in England.
What did they call it? The Protestant Ascension or something like that, right?
Yeah. And at the same time, if you are the fourth rung down on this pyramid and you want to get out of your, essentially your lease, you want to sell it to another tenant that's there, you don't get to make that choice. It gets run all the way up to the ladder for them to make the decision if you can or can't. Also, at the same time, if something happens and that head leader of the land, that head Protestant of the land, has an issue with you, they can just kick you off the land. They don't have to honor any sort of lease or agreement that you have with somebody below them because it's their land.
Yeah, your ass gets evicted.
Yeah. So you see evictions happening. You see prices getting dropped just artificially to try to spite these people that are just trying to make any sort of way to live. And then you see the emphasis on the cities that I was talking about, where now you have to try to supply larger populations in these more concentrated groups.
And that comes into play huge because right now, during this time frame, England is still at war with France, which means if you're at war, you're buying a lot more stuff to go and feed your armies, which means you're buying the grain and the cattle and everything like that. There's this huge emphasis on this agrarian economy that is basically supporting Ireland right now. And in 1815, when the war with France and England actually ends, all of a sudden, no one's buying this stuff. You can't sell it. There's no place for it to go. Yep. And so it creates this huge economic hardship. And this is what kind of leads in, like you were saying, that huge pyramid scheme of like land ownership and everything. Enter Daniel O'Connell.
Oh, Daniel.
Daniel O'Connell. He was born to a
Daniel-san.
good Catholic elite family and educated in France. 1823, he creates a Catholic Association political group. So, majority Catholics in this country. Basically, he's saying, hey, we're going to unify a political party based on this group of Catholics. He's merging the two and just basically playing the Catholic card and saying, like, hey, we need to get into politics to get our voices heard. We're also going to be Catholic themed, so all of you can get behind it. There's no reason to, spread out your vote or anything like that.
What's the lethal weapon of a political group?
The church?
Cash.
That's right. And you get the backing from the church. You're going to have, your coffers are going to be deep.
Well, you go out to all these different Catholics and you understand that money is going to buy you a little bit of power. You institute something called the Catholic rent. The issue is there's not a lot of well-to-do Catholics. There's not a lot of money that's...
Yeah, because it's all held by the Protestant Ascension that are the actual landowners, yeah.
The budget that these people have to give to an organization to be a part of the Catholic Association just isn't there. So Daniel O'Connell sets it at 1 cent. 1 cent a month is what he gets to be a member of this Catholic Association. 1 cent a month doesn't sound like a whole lot. You get 50,000 people that sign up, all of a sudden you get some cash flowing in.
And you're also getting that money from the church as well to kind of back you as well. So you've got a pretty nice revenue stream.
Yeah, you're starting to be able to financially protect some of these people. And when you see that this Catholic association that these people are a part of are starting to help other people and starting to give to the poor, all of a sudden all the other Catholics that weren't a part of it now want to be a part of it and be protected. It's an insurance basically to try to grow your voice.
Exactly. And he wastes no time, and he goes after essentially the crux of this longstanding issue, which is these Catholic restriction laws, not allowing them to hold office or vote, all that stuff. Now, at this point, he is able to... Did I just say public office? Because at this point, there's still some restrictions and everything like that. There's the land ownership, things of that nature.
You can hold it. You're not allowed to sit in Parliament, I believe.
Okay, he's actually the first Catholic to stand for Parliament, though, in 100 years. And because of this, and him being kind of this central figure of this Catholic political party, the Protestants are really worried because he is creating a ton of support and everything. His campaigns, when he's traveling through places, they're huge. They said there was one large enough to where when he started entering the crowd in his carriage, it took him 2 hours to get through the crowd.
Jeez.
So he's just, the people are coming out in hordes. He's got a majority of bishops and priests that are in Ireland that are also backing this party as well. So it has full-on legitimacy. Because of this, and he kind of senses this growing power, he kind of bumps up the stakes a little bit. Now, all of a sudden, he's like, I want to go ahead and repeal the Acts of Union. We're going to go ahead and stay in the United Kingdom, but we want home rule. So you'll still have the benefits of having us within the kingdom and everything like that, but we're going to now decide how things are going to be run in Ireland. And
doesn't sound like a big ask.
No, it doesn't. Well, in response to this, O'Connell ends up being arrested. Not for this, but they trump up some charges in order to go ahead and be able to bring him in.
It was a protest that they were having that turned violent, and some people died. And of course, you're going to point at the figurehead.
Yep. So he's jailed, and within 3 years of being jailed, he ends up dying. I think he ends up getting sick, on the way down to Rome or something like that, maybe to speak to the Pope. But he ends up becoming another martyr, another figurehead that this...
He did more than that before he died.
Okay.
What was it? That's it. O'Connell would actually win the seat for County Clare to sit in Parliament.
Yep.
He couldn't take it. He wasn't allowed to sit in there.
Yep.
Because of his faith. But at the same time, it proved that this Catholic movement was something that
could put cheeks in the seats.
Yes.
When they wanted to, when they were allowed to put these they voted someone into Parliament who wasn't able to even sit there. That's how it was, a write-in vote is basically what it was. It was,
Yeah, this was a Brewster's Millions choose the other option type deal. 1829, the Catholic Relief Act is what ends up getting passed that allows Catholics to sit in Parliament and then get basically the position to be able to hold most public offices again. So this guy pushed so hard that he was able to bring enough people behind him to get that seat to force them to look at it and be like, shit, maybe we need to back
They were
off
too
these guys.
loud to be ignored, basically, at that point. So although he dies, he ends up planting the seed here, and it gets to the point where all of a sudden they may not be in support of like the full Catholic aspect of it and everything, but the Protestants are starting to look at this and saying, home rule is not a bad idea. Like, we know what's going on here. I think it's going to be a little bit better. We're still going to be part of the United Kingdom, but home rule actually is starting to look a little bit more appealing here.
I wonder if they were looking at what was going on in Australia at the time and kind of seeing the Commonwealth system of maybe we can give them a little bit of a leash, but still benefit from them.
We know what's best here. Like, you guys are making rules here that may not be the most applicable to what we're actually doing. This ends up taking kind of a hard stop because 1845 rolls around, and something that is not specific to Catholics or Protestants or English or Irish or anything like that rolls into town. We get the Blight.
Yep. A famine that affects everyone.
And honestly, as the Blight rolls into town, I think we're probably good to roll out of this episode.
Yeah. Episode 2 is going to be action-packed, but to know that we just got the win for the Catholic relief. And then...
yeah, we get the win. And then it all comes crashing down.
Yep.
Leonard Skinner style.
Yep.
So, I think we'll probably put it out next week, right? We'll just go back to back on this.
Might as well. We're doing a country together, so yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we hope you enjoyed this forced foray into Ireland, and we'll catch you next week to finish out the story.
Peace.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for another episode. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe and like button. Follow us. If you didn't like what you heard, still hit that anyway, because we'll probably cover something in the future that you do like. Please follow us on our social media. Adam, hit him with it.
Our Instagram is historically high pod, historically high pod, and we are on Twitter at historically high. That's historically HI.
All right. And if you guys want to send in any feedback, suggestions, hit us up on those two, or you can even do it on Gmail. It's historicallyhighpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again.
Peace.